You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm an American. You asked the question. I know you can't handle brown people, being part of the West. I'm an American. I barely started, but he doesn't want people to hear what's going on. Israel attacked Iran first. In Syria, they bombed an Iranian consulate in violation of the laws of international law and international diplomatic law. Yeah, they killed Iranians in Iran. They then bombed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. They bombed the Iranian capital. And then they bombed Beirut and killed a senior Iranian general. So actually, it was Israel that's been provoking. So we're going to talk about lectures. You should keep your lectures to yourself and be embarrassed for the government you served. As for you living in the region, the problem is not you living in the region. The problem is the army you served and the country you were a spokesman for illegally occupies other people's lands in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the Golan Heights, now in Lebanon again. You are the country that is illegally occupying other people's lands. It's not about you living in your homes, it's about you taking other people's homes. It's about Israel now aiming to annex Gaza, according to Haaretz this week, that Netanyahu no longer has any interest in saving the hostages, as he never did, and is eyeing annexation of Gaza, to quote the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. I'm not sure how Jonathan still comes on these shows and defends that kind of barbarism and open war crimes. I'm not sure how Jonathan sleeps at night watching people burned to death thanks to the military that he served and is now being investigated both at the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. That is what you stand for. You serve the IDF, the Israeli military, which, as I say, is being investigated at the ICJ, and the ICC. You serve a military that has been credibly accused by the United Nations just last week, by Israeli media, which showed videos of mass rape of Palestinian detainees. The New York Times this week reported that your military sent children, Palestinian children, as human shields into booby-trapped tunnels and buildings. Is that what you did, Jonathan? Can you tell us today, did you ever send a Palestinian child as a human shield into a tunnel? Because the New York Times is saying your military did that. The World Food Programme is saying your military is starving the people of northern Gaza. Did you starve people when you were in the military, Jonathan? What do you stand for? Starvation? Mass rape? Ethnic cleansing? Genocide? Every human rights group in the world says your military is an abuser of hument rights. I don't know how many human rights you yourself have personally abused. I don't know if you turned a blind eye to rape on your custody. I don't know if you killed children at cold blank, at point-blank range like Israeli snipers did to people carrying white flags. You can tell us today how many people you've killed or how many people you've tortured. I'll be here all day.
Listen.
But the issue is you're bombing areas of tents and hospitals. You've bombed refugee camps, as Piers pointed out. You've bombed schools, as I've pointed out, and you've dodged. You bombed a Lebanese Christian town and killed 23 people from one family, including 2 babies. You've bombed UN peacekeeping soldiers from Ireland and Italy who are not Hamas or Hezbollah either. Israel is bombing people deliberately. We don't need your word for that. We've seen hundreds of TikToks, including my company, Zateo, that you happily mentioned earlier, put out an entire documentary interviewing Israeli soldiers and showing the TikToks of them bragging about their violence inside of Gaza and now Lebanon. You talk about low-hanging fruit. Let's just be clear here on the facts, since people are not going to get the facts, because as you've read my book, there's a tactic called gish galloping, which is what you just did, which is to talk over all the facts without engaging with them. Here are the facts that people can go look up for themselves. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the UN Human Rights Office, UNICEF, UNHCR, Save the Children, World Food Programme, WHO, Doctors Without Borders, I can keep going, Refugees International, International Rescue, they all, Care International, Christian Aid, Physicians for Human Rights, they all say the Israeli military is to blame for the casualties, for the killing of innocent people, for not giving warnings, for bombing civilian targets, and for starving the people of northern Gaza. Right now, Save the Children say that northern Gaza looks like the depths of hell. The World Food Programme says no food has been allowed in by your government and your military since the start of October. And by the way, one last point. You mentioned, maybe 10 soldiers did this, 10 soldiers did that. Actually, according to the UN, this stuff is systematic. And I would ask you asked me who my investors are, I'll ask you. You were in the Israeli military. You proudly said you were combatant. So I'm going to ask you, were you involved in the things the Israeli military is being accused of by the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor, by human rights groups, intentional killing of civilians, starving of civilians, the use of rape and sexual violence against detainees, using Palestinian children as human shields, as the New York Times reported this week? Did you do any of that when you were in your service?